Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today in our 6th of 6 webinars in the coronavirus series. I can't believe it's already been 6 of these. When we first launched this, session 1, I believe, was on March 12th. It's unbelievable to see where we're at now in just a matter of 5 to 6 weeks. So we have a lot of information to get through here, and I'm happy to see lots of you still joining in. Before we kick this off, I wanted to put down a couple of rules of engagement here. We're going to utilize the GoToWebinar software pretty heavily here. The first thing would be to just check your computer audio, make sure that you can hear us crystal clear. And the second most important thing is we're going to ask you to really interact with us with the question panel. So if you have comments, questions, anything that you don't understand or you want to add to the conversation, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. So please input your questions into the question panel. And if we don't address them in our Q&A, we're happy to do so afterwards. Finally, even if you're not able to attend, all registrants of this webinar are going to get a recorded video as well as our retail playbook that is going to be a downloadable PDF available to everybody towards the end of this week. We're adding a lot more content as it's coming in, even to the hour today. The video recording will go out later today, but we're going to send out the final playbook to you this week so you can sit down with your team and watch it at your leisure. So I wanted to start out with looking at the Management One clients here. We want to let people know, obviously, stores are shut down. We understand the situation with many retailers around the country, around the world. The Management One retailers are still doing business, and retail all over the country and the world is not dead. If we look at M1 clients alone, 65% of our clients are still supplying data from their active businesses. A lot of them have shifted online, shifted to social media, and they're doing business as opposed to sitting on the sidelines and waiting for the epidemic to pass them over. So why a playbook? Why did we come up with the Retail Recovery Playbook? We asked many of you registrants and many of our retail partners and our vendor partners to fill out a survey last week and over the weekend. Hundreds of retailers responded, and one of the questions was, have you established a strategy with your internal team to be implemented when your store opens? We don't know if it's May 1st, June 1st, but it is going to reopen. And is there a strategy in place? Only a little over 20% responded with a full yes, which means 80% of you are either going to create a strategy when you get the date of your reopen, or you just really don't know where to begin. And that's what gave us the idea to really develop a solid playbook for you. And we want to make sure that we're really proud of our retail clients for staying open, and we want to give them the tools to successfully reopen when the doors are ready to go. So without further ado, I want to introduce CEO and President of Management One, Mark Weiss.
Well, thank you, Nico. First, want to thank all the retailers out there who have really worked hard in an uncertain world and have been creative, showed real Yankee ingenuity, and have really worked, thought through, been very thoughtful about dealing with applying for government funding and dealing with their employees and their thoughts. And I want to thank them all for their hard work and feedback. We're in a unique position in that we represent many retailers, over 100 affiliates who present our products, and a wonderful team of people that have been really working 7 days a week since the end of February to try to stay one step ahead. I've been in retail my whole life, from the time I was a toddler in my dad's and mom's dress shop in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was born and raised. And in the last 33 years, I have committed my career to the financial security of retailers and been through wars, recessions, deep recessions, 2001, 2008. And like all of you in the business, never seen anything like this. However, that doesn't mean there isn't anything we can do. And we've been very proactive in terms of trying to stay one step ahead of the curve. and providing information and being a conduit of good, solid information that we're vetting, and sharing the things that we know that you can do that we can work on, and that's the purpose of today's webinar. So we are going to break this down into a playbook that will be distributed, both not just in not in this format, but we're going to have a PDF downloader format that you'll be able to get through your M1 affiliate or on our website, and it will be updated as changes happen, and we're trying to stay current with all the changes. Matter of fact, up to 10 minutes before this webinar, we got more current information. So it will be updated and changed. It'll be downloaded. You can download it off our website in a PDF format, and we're going to keep this current. Thank you. So the benefits of going through this is to be proactive about the recovery, scenario planning, which is ongoing. We are going to go through a relaxation of the shutdown to potentially another suppression and another recovery. I do think that we're trying to stay ahead of the scenario planning. We're capturing data daily, a lot of data every day, so we're learning as we go. We're learning from other markets and we're going to share that information with you. There's a play for you to capture market share. Retail Dive has published that they believe 15,000 retailers will not make it through this. So for those of you that are fighting this and are in the game, there's an opportunity to pick up market share. So being proactive is important. Even in uncertain times, there's things that you can do, and we've been documenting and getting feedback on those things, and we're going to share them with you today. And for Management One clients that are on our planning, in May, we're going to redo every plan as if it were a new location. Every class of every location will be reset on every single report we deliver based on the most current information we have, on the machine learning that we implemented almost a year and a half ago now, and feedback from the field. As Mahatma Gandhi said, the future depends on what you do today. And there's going to be a lot of things that you can do to prepare for the future. We are entering the brave new world of retail. So it starts with throwing out last year. It's ridiculous to think about meeting last year or even comparing with last year, except to the extent of how far off you believe you'll be. So as I said before, our plans will be tailored to the vertical based on the contingency modeling that we're creating and ongoing data pulls from digital sales that we're getting every day. Many of you were in the digital universe and the e-commerce world. Many of you scrambled in the last couple of weeks to get on, and I think many of you that I've talked to are surprised at how well you're doing. There's been enormous creativity in the ways you've built relationships technologically with your customers, and that's exciting to see. I think we're operating under the assumption that most stores will be open by June 1st, and this is by June 1st rather, and we know that this is on a state-by-state basis and maybe county-by-county basis or city-by-city. Earlier openings will benefit from the trending that we're doing on our own plans, and revenue forecasts and new expense structures need to be in alignment. So that all starts with not looking at last year, but moving forward. On the financial side, what is your available cash in the next 30, 60, 90 days? We think it's more helpful to look at a 12-week period than it is to look at an annual period. This is going to unfold on a weekly basis, and updating your cash flows on a weekly basis is critical. We came up with a 12-week cash flow tool that's available. I've already spoken to many retailers that have used it, and they've all shared back to me that it's been an incredibly useful document in terms of them thinking through their expenses, thinking through their employee compensation, thinking through how their expenses are going to line up in the next 12 weeks. This should be updated, and we're going to say this over and over again, but this document needs to be updated, or a like document. You can certainly create your own. Management One has a document that we created for our 12-week program that's that's tailored off of this. But it really allows you to reallocate your cash as your business changes. Because there's uncertainty doesn't mean that you can't plan. Uncertainty makes it more difficult when you don't plan, because you can't make changes, you can't adopt, you can't change whether you have more or less money. You can add your PPP money in and your EIDL money as that income comes in. The 12-week cash flow allows you to see your business and the money that is available. In Canada, you have CEBA and CERB and possibly 2 other programs. I understand that the nature of what's available in Canada is not necessarily the extent that it is in the United States, but based on the information we've gotten so far in the United States from the surveys we've done, about 21% of our clients have received PPP money. And it's not about profit right now. It's really about managing your cash flow and right-sizing your business. When you develop a cash flow, it allows you to negotiate with your landlords concerning your monthly rent payments. It allows you to negotiate with your vendors, and Paul's going to talk a little bit more about that when he gets into inventory, about dating and discounts. You can't pay on money you don't have. So having a realistic expectation of what your projections are going to be and what they're going to look like is important. And I think part of what a lot of you can do now is you have run rates on your e-commerce and your digital business. So you can kind of begin to plan that out. And it's important to think about keeping your digital business separate from your brick and mortar business in terms of how you plan that. And that's why we separated that on that cash flow spreadsheet. We recommend, and I really got this idea from one of our clients, to set up a general ledger for your PPP account. As bills get paid, you want to attribute those to that loan. The forgiveness on the loan is going to be based on, according to the SBA this morning, and I got off the phone with them about a half an hour before this webinar, the banks are going to be the ultimate adjudicators of whether the forgiveness is done or not. The EIDL will be the SBA. So setting up on your general ledger accounts, in Management One, for example, we're going to use our PPP money out of a separate checking account that will be tied to our ADP payroll account, so we can keep better track of it. I found out this morning there's interim final rules from the SBA. This link will be on your Retail Recovery Playbook, along with other links. Those rules will get updated as information changes. There are not answers to every question as it regards the government guidance. Some of those are still forthcoming and will change, so it's important to keep up to that. But you can make decisions based on the most current guidance. Know your cash position at all times. Again, this allows you to better strategize on decisions that affect your inventory, your team, your customer, and your store. We're probably going to get tired of hearing us say this, but update that cash flow every week. I know some of you who started a week and a half ago have already made major updates to it. And if you're a client of ours or you use another service, make sure that you meet weekly with your consultants, your affiliates, so that you have somebody to talk through these ideas, help you with your critical thinking, and talk about and share information on what other people are doing as well. I think that this is really important because you're not alone in this, and other people are doing other things. And the more we collaborate and be transparent, it really is better off for everybody, because we all win. Everybody implements differently, but sharing information at this critical time is good for the entire retail community. And as many of you know, the PPP money can be used mostly on payroll, onboarding employees, vacation and sick pay. We've gone over this in our webinars. Rent and rent negotiations of 25% can be used for that. So it's important that you read through the documentation and understand it. And also, for those of you that have a previous, before this, had an SBA 7A or 504 loan, those are being paid by the SBA for the next 6 months, starting with April, interest and principal. And there's also a link that we've shared that has that information as well. It's important to make every fixed expense possible a variable expense. So it's all tied to revenue. So whatever revenue you take in, if you have all of your expenses to the best of your ability to be variable, it better allows you to do your cash flows. So even normally fixed expenses like rent can certainly, in negotiations, be reflected as a variable expense in your negotiations with your landlord. And again, we had a webinar on that you can go back to, and you can certainly call us, and we'll certainly share ideas and strategies with you. And this is the cash flow. Again, it's available to you. I'm not going to go through it. It's pretty self-sufficient. We do also have a video tutorial of how to use this. And again, feel free to use this. There's extra lines in here that you can add your own expenses to, but it really is a great exercise for you to better have peace of mind, really. I mean, if you begin to guesstimate your business, and you can begin to guesstimate and understand and negotiate your expenses and know what cash you have or don't have, no matter how little you start with, you're going to start generating revenue. Those of you that are sitting with cash, you're going to want to protect it to the best of your ability. So I think that this is a real great tool and a simple tool to work with and use. And again, we're here to help you with it. Thanks to some other webinars, which we do listen to. We listen to as many webinars as we can. It's a good idea to file an insurance claim, research your state regulations, but Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Louisiana are introducing legislation which would require insurers to pay claims on business interruption losses attributed to COVID-19. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to get into whether this can go into effect as a previous condition or not, but governments can make laws, and we've already seen banking regulation laws thrown out the window. So, but stay tuned into your own government, and there are links available from your government to pay attention to legislation, any legislation that could be a source of income and revenue for you is certainly worth your time and effort. Okay, we are going to talk about inventory on the next section of this. I'm going to turn this over to Paul to share some thoughts on a lot of we've gotten tons of questions on what to do with my inventory, what to do with my fall, and so forth. We're going to give you our thoughts on this. In the survey we took, you can see that less than 20% of the respondents are accepting summer deliveries with discounts or dating. About 17% have canceled all summer delivery. Over 60% have all their purchases on hold for now. And there's under 10% don't know yet what to do with their inventory. So without further ado, I'm happy to turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark, very much. Good morning or good afternoon, whatever time of day it might be where you're listening to us. I'm going to start with what we might expect relative to revenue and traffic levels over the initial 2 or 3 months after we reopen. Right now at Management One, we're modeling sales projections based on what we have learned from reporting by American and European retailers operating in China and other Asian nations. I'll give you an example. Starbucks China reported sales the first week about 1/2 of that same week's sales from the year prior. And each ensuing week they reopened, sales began to marginally climb against those same weeks in 2019. Now, unless you own a hair salon or are a dentist, by all accounts, we're looking at a much slower U-shaped recovery. These realistic projections will be in the retail orbit forecasts. And of course, they're going to vary based on vertical to vertical, state to state, and as Mark said, even in some cases, county by county. You know, for apparel, initially, it's going to be a tough row to hoe. For example, the apparel vertical has been the hardest hit, with March sales down 50% nationwide. In addition, it's projected that once open, we will be confronted with an avalanche of promotions and markdowns. So, how much do we need to clear? How aggressive should we be? There's going to be a glut of inventory as the economy starts to open up, and we do need to turn inventory into cash. So let me start with, now is the time on your part for a critical vendor analysis. And this vendor analysis should determine your vendor negotiations on payables. Now, there are many smaller retailers who pay their vendors with credit cards, and their inventory has already been paid in full. This should be a point of negotiation for those retailers with those vendors on future orders and discounts. Categorize your vendor structure. A, critical; B, somewhat critical; C, questionable going forward. Which vendors are going to get the axe? Because even in good times, you should be looking to cull down your vendor matrix, let alone what we're experiencing right now. And manufacturers are negotiating like never before. So what have you negotiated? What can you negotiate? Dating, discounting, cancellations, protection. Our findings are everything is on the table today. But always remember that successful negotiations between two parties are based on a win-win for both. You can go to the next slide. Develop a plan through your current on-hand inventory. As summer and fall gets pushed back, think buy now, wear now is the new reality. I mean, it's okay to reorder, but it has to be done at the right margin. And very, very important, we need to think critically about our inventory. Data can be a difference maker, because at this time, we cannot fly blind. We need to analyze through a deep dive classifications and assortments, grade your inventory by class, by vendor, by style, and if at all possible, we should try to avoid to panic and take blanket store-wide markdowns in June and July. And in that vein, we should strongly consider shifting our clearance this year to August. Two reasons. After missing the mid-March to May selling window, it gives us more time to sell after reopening. And in addition, there's a very good chance fall deliveries may very well be late. With that said, if category X is sitting on a $30,000 summer retail inventory, and our sales projections would indicate that revenue from June through August is only going to be $7,000, well, that would be a time for a prayer meeting on how we're going to get rid of this merchandise. I would also consider pack and hold early goods received for early fall. Just a few days ago, PVH, which owns brands called Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, are seriously looking at packing and hold some of its spring summer inventory in Q3 delivery in order to preserve its ability to sell at full price, or at least something close to it, because they are very wary of having to sell inventory off to off-price retail partners at a steep discount. Nico? The plan on demand is the retail orbit tool needed now more than ever when you reopen. The plan on demand manages your run rate on your e-commerce business, on your brick and mortar business, and you need to manage both the run rate between how much you're selling and how much you own. Equally important will be Q3 and Q4. Does your fall on order fall in line with the new realistic revised sales projections for August and September, October and November? Are you overbought? Are you underbought? And if so, you're underbought, what is the plan to fill those orders? 53% of respondents to our survey said they have not even committed half of what their needs are for fall. You're going to need fresh product, but cash is going to be tight and sales revenue a challenge. Get in touch with all your suppliers on what is available. What can they commit to? Leave a percentage of your open to buy open for opportunities and or trend changes. This fall could be a buyer's market for off price. I would also consider increasing your planned turn rates in key classes. Narrow and deep with tight assortments will be the order of the day. We cannot afford to allow inventory to sit on the sales floor month after month after month. We need to tighten up on your weeks and months supply levels. And your vendor wish list. Vendors that, for whatever reason, have turned you down in the past, have you contacted them? Do you have a plan to initiate the conversation? Because they may be much more willing to talk to you now after the shutdown than they were before. And ask your vendors if they provide Dropship. Hundreds of vendors today are using a piece of software called Disco, which was developed for Nordstrom. Your vendor ships directly to your customer, and you get your percentage without doing any of the handling of the merchandise. And finally, cash flows and on orders, as Mark talked about. They will need to be updated. They will need to be changed as changes are needed once you reopen. Now, I've always said that retail is a blend of 50% art and 50% science. However, during this crisis, the science of managing risk and using data to make decisions in regards to inventory is now in the forefront. And I'm going to turn this over now to Celeste.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. As Mark and Paul explained, the foundation of a retail recovery plan must be based on your finances and your inventory. Once you have a clear strategy for each, you can now move into the second phase of that recovery plan, the how you are going to reopen your doors. This will be different for each of you. It'll depend on your customer, the length of time you've been closed, and more importantly, how prepared were you prior to closing and how creative were you while you were closed. As you look at your recovery plan, you really need to ask yourself the following question: how am I going to resell my store again? Two of the key factors will be your preparedness and your creativity. From our survey, we learned that 85% of our retailers leveraged online channels to stay connected to their retailers and continue to do business. In some cases, it was through established channels, and for others, they just created them. We heard stories from retailers that didn't have an e-com site that they stayed up for 96 hours straight and created an e-com site to be able to stay connected to their customers and to do business. That's creativity and that's survival. Make no mistake, Nico, next slide. Thank you. Make no mistake, you're in competition for ideas. Larger companies like never before demonstrated how nimble they could be. ADP, for example, are delivering new reports to assist in the PPP and other government regulations. Look at what Walmart, Target, and Best Buy did to accommodate curbside pickup, how they were attacking their employees and how their employees were reaching out to their customers as they came in the door. You need to be nimble. You have the ability to be nimble. Even at Management One, we had to pivot. We've been a virtual company for over 20 years. We had tools in place to communicate, but our amount of communication internally and externally was hugely increased. In addition to our core focus of planning, we realized the need for education and quickly developed this webinar series. On our Slack channel, we have a coronavirus channel between our affiliates and M1 so we can share ideas, thoughts, and challenges. And we never said we were closed. The next thing you need to think about is your team. How creative were you during your closure for them to be productive to provide an ROI? Did you set up a virtual selling platform where your associates were able to connect one-on-one with your customers? Did you kick up the commissions? How did you communicate with your associates during your closure? And more importantly, how are you making your team a part of that recovery plan to reopen? Even though you're closed now, this is a time to re-examine and reset. Do you have the right person in the right seat? Are you able to hire people you always wanted? Creativity is the new tool. If you're not creative, then invest in someone who is. Next, Nico. Are you training your team prior to reopening, or are you just going to reopen your doors and hope for the best? You need to train on in-store and virtual selling, but you also need to train on empathy. Your team needs to be able to read people. You need to be able to train your associates on the new safety procedures that you will put in place. This will help alleviate employee concerns. This is a time to cultivate, develop, and enable your team. They need to lead from a place of confidence. Will your staff Will you have less staff when you reopen? What are your expectations for them? You need to be transparent and communicate those. Prioritize and teach them their new responsibilities. They won't know what to do if you don't. And what will be your compensation plan? The PPP is only 8 weeks. What's the plan after that? All pay needs to be variable, meaning revenue will be uncertain, so all expenses need to be re-examined. Salaries need to be also. And again, as Mark and Paul said, you need to continually update your cash flow with any changes. Next, know your customer. The customer you had pre-pandemic in all likelihood will not be the same customer post-pandemic. You need to ask questions and understand, how has your customer changed? Do you know their sentiment? Do they still have the same values that you have? Do your research. EY.com study and McKinsey have a survey out there. We will provide the links in the final version that gets sent out to you after the webinar, and we encourage you to read both of these articles and apply them within your store. And by knowing and understanding how your customer has changed, it will help you develop the right message to market to your customers in the next 30, 60, and 90 days. And then are you collecting enough data for your customer to embrace the effective omni-channel strategies, upselling and cross-selling, retention, referral, or unique in-store experiences? And third is through your store. What will be your new customer experience? You will need to alleviate both employee and customer concerns and build trust again. Social distancing and fear of crowds will be present when you reopen. As an independent retailer, you have a huge advantage. You are positioned to offer a safer shopping experience due to your lower foot traffic, your smaller footprint, and the relationship that you have to your customer. Now, all of the other safety requirements that you're going to put into place, we're going to have on our playbook, and such as how to sanitize your fitting rooms. Will you offer masks? Will your employees wear gloves? All of this will be in detail in our playbook, but there's one point that we want to really hit home here is, how are you going to handle clothes that have been tried on? We consulted with one of the top 10 infectious disease doctors in the world, and yes, although the virus is transmittable off hard surfaces, it is less likely the virus can be transmitted through fabrics. The disease can live to 150 degrees. So a solution is to steam your garments after each try-on. Steamers heat to 212 degrees. In addition, we have been in contact with Jiffy Steamers, and they have provided a protocol which will be available in our playbook. Okay. You also want to think about the personal hygiene and presentation for your employees. How will they wash their hands? What will they look like? Will they wear gloves? Will they wear masks? How much will this add to your overall expense? That expense, again, needs to be added into your weekly cash flow. In addition, managing your employee's health is critical. Maintain an open dialogue. If somebody is not feeling well, they need to not be there. You need to stay current with recently enacted laws regarding employee sick leave. Maintain social distancing between all employees within your workspace. And finally, have you developed an in-store social distancing and merchandising plan? Which tools are you going to implement? What would be the lead time to implement some of those new tools? You need to start thinking about all of this now. Have you assessed the maximum number of people allowed in your store? How are you going to reevaluate how you're going to do displays? This all needs to be communicated to your staff so they can comfortably communicate it to your customers. What did you do right while you were closed? What special services added value? Curbside pickup, staggered appointments, off shopping hours, live streaming events. Are you going to continue to do any of these? That's a question you'll have to ask, and how does it fit into your overall business model? And low touch checkout. How do you avoid cash payments in favor of digital options? Does your POS accept Apple Pay, Google Pay, Venmo, PayPal? Can you implement in your store a self-checkout area? Can you email receipts? What are you going to do with your displays? Consider adding video. Or can you add a scannable QR code to product tags that link visualizations as well? As you can see, reopening your store is just not opening your doors. What we've shared here is just the start of creating your retail recovery plan. It doesn't matter when your store will reopen. What matters is you have a solid understanding of your finances and inventory and are prepared with a plan on how to support them. It will take collaboration, creativity, coaching, flexibility, and the patience to get your store ready to reopen. We encourage you to start that process now. I'll turn it back to Mark.
Thank you, Celeste. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. Want to move on to the next slide, Nico. So one of the things that we were thinking of doing is sourcing safety toolkits for retail stores, and we've spent the last week trying to find them. Proceeds will go to part of the proceeds will go to a hunger charity with an approved A rating. We're actually going to ask you to take a poll on this before we commit, because it's a significant expense to buy the products. But just in the kits, and the simplest thing to do is just to put a simple kit together. Would be disposable nitrile gloves, 100 count, hand sanitizers, 10 bottles at 8 ounces, which gives you about 2,600 times that you can wipe your hands. Sanitizer wipe, 240 count, mask, 200 count. The estimated price, I think including shipping and taxing, is somewhere around $460. That's today's estimated price. We're constantly looking at where we can get goods in a few days, as well as being grade A quality goods and being able to put the kits together. So we would ask you to take the poll to give us an idea if this is even a good idea. I would be interested. No, I can find and source my own safety equipment.
And we have that poll window up now for you folks. We'll give it about a minute or so for everyone to respond, but it's interesting if people are willing to purchase the full kit and make things easier, or if you want to just go it on your own and source everything separately. While people are answering this poll, I will say, Mark, somebody just added a question right now about a thermometer. Are we going to add a thermometer in here?
We can thermometer. We can't add a thermometer, but we have found that thermometers seem to be available in stores. But we do have access to a thermometer, and if we get a lot of requests for it, it would up the price of the package. Again, we tried to keep the package price, the toolkit price, as low as possible. But we could find. We do have remote thermometers that you can hold up distantly from people coming in.
Okay, we have about 65% of the votes in. I'm going to close it and save some of our time for Q&A.
Right.
But roughly a coin flip with, let me share the results here.
Okay. For those of you that are going to source your own equipment, it is all available. If we decide not to do this, we can certainly share our links with you. We had to go to a number of different sources to find the equipment at reasonable prices. That was also safety, and the really cheap prices required gigantic quantities of close to $500,000. Okay, thank you for that. Before we get to questions, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and the questions that we don't get to were the good, the ones where there's a lot of the same questions. We will put on our playbook and answer them to the best of our ability. There aren't answers for every questions, and there's unique issues with everybody. Your relationships with your vendors are all different. Your relationships with your other creditors, like your landlords, is all different. So a lot of times it's a case-by-case basis. We can only work in general terms. But one thing I can tell you is that we are looking at acceleration in a way that we've never seen it before. And the things that you're doing today will carry on into the future, but your business is not going to be the same forever the way it was before. Focus on the future, not on the past, and focus on the things you can do, and not so much the things you regret or can't do. I know that's difficult. It's difficult for me. Our business is going to change as well, and we're looking at how we're going to deliver differently and better, and it's all part of looking at the opportunities that are in front of us and not regretting the things that we can't change or do anything about. And I know there's frustration, I know there's anxiety, I know there's uncertainty, we're all feeling it, but I have found in my own business, and I have employees and we have a lot of the same concerns that you do. I have found that focusing on the things we can do and take care of has helped. I don't win them all. Some are, they're not all wins, but there are enough wins out there to continue to move forward. Let's take some questions. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to have another session, a town hall session on this Thursday, where I know a lot of retailers want to speak and talk about their experiences and what they've done. And we've got partners, synergistic relationships with Bob Negan at Whizbang and Ashley Alderson at the Boutique Hub. They're fine people that are talking with thousands of retailers all the time. So getting their perspective and having them moderate this with us, I think is going to be a wonderful opportunity. And obviously for many of you, an opportunity to share. So Nico, I'll open up you have the questions there. So we'll take what we can for the next 20 minutes.
I do. Thanks to everyone for submitting your questions. I will try to sort through these as best I can. The first question, I'll go back to what Paul was saying about markdowns, and there might have been a misunderstanding with what he was saying in reference to August. One of our attendees was asking about how can we wait until August to mark down while the rest of the world will be promoting heavily. So Paul, can you just speak to that one really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nico. And that's a great question. And you're going to have to promote. There's no question about it. What I was differentiating is actually an end of season store-wide clearance as opposed to having running sales in June and July. This is a particularly acute problem in apparel, more so than almost any other vertical that we work with. So yes, you're going to have to promote, you're going to have to offer sales, but what we were saying is if you can extend your clearance into August, the other reason is you don't want an empty store. And a lot of fall right now we're looking at is not going to be delivered until possibly as late as end of August and into September, which normal deliveries would have been July, August. So yes, promote, of course, particularly in apparel, but we're recommending if you can, do not clearance the entire store of spring, summer merchandise until August.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that. One of the things that that you learn in looking at data the way we do, and we look at tons of data every day, even now, and that life, the world is sometimes counterintuitive. Just because somebody that you carry in the store, the vendor has a website is discounting it 50 to 80%, that doesn't mean that you have to necessarily meet that. We already know, for example, that our stores that are selling on e-commerce are selling for bigger discounts and on one-to-one selling with their customers. So I don't think that you have to panic and necessarily respond to what your competition's doing. You have to respond to what's actually happening in your own business. You have relationships with your customers. They buy from you from other reasons. They're going to want to support small businesses. The advantage of a small business is that, or an independent retailer especially, is that you're a safe place to go. You're not necessarily in a mall, but you're in a setting that they feel very comfortable with, where you can limit the amount of people and the accessibility. It's a very safe place to be. And people will pay for that. People will pay for the value of the fact that you've steamed your clothes, the fact that they know that you're going to do the things to take care of them, that they'll support you. I mean, look at the massive amount of gift certificates our clients have sold to their customers that they can use when they come in to support them and give them cash. So don't necessarily think that you have to compete with what everyone else is doing out there. You have to see what works for you and not jump the gun unnecessarily to a deep play in discounts that may not be necessary.
That is a good point. Our next question on the vendor side, Doug is asking, does using a vendor dropship software, does it train our customers to shop online? And could it possibly give our suppliers contact info to market directly to our customers?
They say that they don't do that. Who's to say they will or they won't? But it's not something that you have to take care of right away. I mean, it's an interim solution, and it's a great question, Doug. I mean, I had this question with Craig Bender up in Minnesota yesterday. But when you can get 45% cash, for example, on shoes, is it's a great tool to keep cash going without having to invest in inventory. So it's a temporary solution. You can cut it off when it's not necessary. Listen, for me, on demand, that's not great for our business either. So, but on the other hand, look for solutions that work, even if they're temporary. We had some temporary solutions last month, for example, in the month of April. So, I mean, I think you want to do things that help bridge you to the next place, and then cut it off. At the end of the day, your relationships with your customer, a vendor's never going to be able to match that.
Absolutely. A question from Kaylee. She's asking, how can we push full priced product? Are there any creative ways that retailers are selling without offering a discount? I think the raffle that one of our affiliates brought up was probably the perfect example for this one. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
Yeah. I mean, the raffle is just a fabulous idea, and it's been copied all over. One of our, I think it was a fly fishing store, had a $1,200 reel, and they raffled 12 tickets for $100 each, and sold them out in 20 minutes. And have since had 45 other raffles, and they're actually going to beat their month. I think they're going to beat their month from last year. So there are, I mean, like I said at onset, the creativity that our retailers are, and this was also done in a Better Men's store, the creativity that our clients are exhibiting during this crisis, Yankee ingenuity has been amazing. And to think that you can't sell regular price is a myth. Just because other people aren't selling. I was looking at a couple clients yesterday, again, we're getting data, and it was just amazing the amount of regular price business they were doing virtually. On one-to-one selling. I mean, Zoom and all the other software that's out there gives you a chance to really relate and have meet and have opportunities to work with your clients. So I certainly take advantage of it for your people who are at home. I mean, we've got retailers where they're one person goes into a store a day and has appointments set up, and they're using FaceTime and other the technology to work with your clients virtually exists. So take advantage of it.
And this question is for Paul, actually, from Janelle. For retail clothing, would you suggest just storing our winter products that we have until next fall and then offering a discount because it was last season?
Hey, Janelle. This is winter product that you had from last winter. Is that correct? I would assume.
Yes.
What we're recommending right now is on Fashion Basics, core items that come in for spring, summer, that could be packed and hold and sit and brought out in August and September. But on fashion merchandise, I would try to cash out on that as fast as you can, even if it is fall. It's only going to get worse the longer it sits there. And you're going to be discounting it right at the beginning of the season too, which is actually a positive.
And this question is for Mark, actually, from one of our M1 affiliates, Robert Reedy, because I know that you have a little background on this, Mark. Can you please address creative ways to incentivize commissions for your salespeople?
Yeah. There are lots of ways to be creative with your people. I mean, I love games. I mean, I would look at the raffles. I mean, the raffles have been amazing. I think that for those of you that are getting PPP money, there's an opportunity to double commissions. There's things that you can do with contests that will motivate. Again, if you treat it variable and you tie it to the sale, it becomes a win-win. And don't focus so much on how much profit you're going to make, but how much cash you're going to create. And not that margins aren't important. I mean, you do juggle between the two, but you've got an opportunity to be very creative when it comes to, I think a great idea is to incentivize your people on their ideas, and brainstorm with your people. I think some of the best solutions that you're going to see in terms of, it doesn't just have to be incentivizing people on their selling, it can be incentivizing people on their ideas. And the best idea gets blah, 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 or gets recognition. So I think there's lots of ways. I think some of the best ideas that we're going to see in the next 6 months are going to come from, you know, people that you work with. Just because you're the owner of the store doesn't mean you have all the answers. We use EOS traction in our business, and all the good ideas don't come from me, they come from my people. So I think that, you know, really there's lots of opportunities to incentivize and pay people and get their feedback and get them involved in ideas. This is about ideas. I mean, I don't want to, you know, Celeste mentioned it before. We're at a moment where creativity wins. And if you're highly creative, that's great. If you're not, look at the people you have within your team that are. And if you don't have somebody that's creative, hire them and go to an artist, go to people who are highly creative, and they'll come up with great ideas. Your friends that are creative. I mean, there's no stone should be unturned when it comes to creating thoughts. I get ideas from my friends every day. They email me. Some are great ideas, some are dumb ideas. Some are dumb ideas that end up becoming great ideas. So incentivizing.
And this question is for probably Mark and Paul, both of you. What are your data sources for the reopening that is helping to plan the sales forecast? Where are we getting these models from? Because it's actually a mixture of sources, including our own and external.
Yeah, that's a dartboard. No, you know, I know it's a bad joke probably. I think, you know, we're going to look at it by class, by vertical, because they're all different. Machine learning tells us which verticals are more similar than what you might think. We collect data every day from our clients that are on Orbit Shuttle. So we're learning from that. We're learning what's working, what's not working. We're certainly going to look at, you know, one thing is to look at how the stores are comparing against what we would think would be normal for a time like this. We've been in business 33 years, so we've been through tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, you name it. So we've got data on all that. It's not the same as this. There's more uncertainty, obviously, but we've got just a gigantic data set of information to learn against, plus feedback. I want to say like a PBS from viewers like you, but feedback from you and your clients, and what you own in inventory, what you have coming in. You know, the strength of your ability to respond. I mean, we can extrapolate information with very little data and forecast it. How accurate it will be, we'll see at the end of the day, but it's going to be better than a guess and better than a dartboard. And we're also, as Paul intimated before, we also have other contingency models that we have access to, and other economic data that plays into things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. We have other economic, we buy other economic data that we use for planning where that we're either a leader or a laggard or in front of it. So it's not like forecasting, you know, nobody can forecast the stock market. And this is certainly a time of uncertainty, but we're going to let data drive us, and we're not going to guess. We're going to do our best to make educated, thoughtful decisions.
Now, I'm looking at several different questions that are very subjective, and it really depends on the store itself. I have people asking what percentage I should ask my vendor to mark down, you know, how far apart should I put my displays? A lot of what you're asking is really going to be dependent on your store. It's going to be dependent on your relationship with your vendor. We have a previous webinar that discussed vendor relationships, and I strongly urge you to download the recording from that one. Somebody was asking about plexi shields at the cash wrap. I'm assuming, of course, that is an option if you're willing to put that up. One person is asking, how can an employee be asked to work as a healthcare worker and take a temperature? And even assuming someone agrees to that, how would you turn away a customer that had a temperature? You know, this is uncharted waters for everybody. And I think being direct with your customers in regard to turning them away or only allowing a certain number in your store, you're just going to have to be upfront and let them know that these are the policies and you're just trying to implement this for the greater good. Also, that it's temporary.
Nico, hey,
let them
Nico,
know that
I'm
it's
going to interrupt
temporary.
for a second. Nico, I want to interrupt something. I think we're seeing something that's going on in the world today that we hadn't had to deal with before, and that's social shaming. And I know that a lot of our clients, before they closed and they stayed open as long as they could, were socially shamed on Facebook. They got letters from people who were on the other side of the country that had nothing to do with them, putting tremendous pressure on them. These are individual choices, and the best you can do is follow your best common sense and guidelines and what's in your heart and what's right. And what's right for one person isn't necessarily right for another person. But we live in a different world today, and you've got to, at the end of the day, do what you believe is right for you and for your people and your company and your clients. And hopefully that's always going to be, everyone is going to do it. I would think that everybody would think about the safety of everyone, and not let social media or not let other people harass you into decisions that you're not comfortable with. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this business
No, I think that was perfect.
Really, it's a burr for me, and it's unfortunate. These are people who don't have a stake in the game, and it's easier for them to call out other people. So it's an issue, but it's not one that you have to kowtow to.
And this next question is for Paul. Paul, can you please explain the benefit of trending data, stock to sales ratios and turnover, things of that nature, and how it's beneficial, actually crucial at this time?
Well, do we have a few hours? That's a big picture question, but yes, trending data is something that we do at Management One. We look at each month's percentage to overall annual sales in each category. We know the weight of each category. So when we retrend, we know exactly how powerful a trend it is. Is it a profitable trend? A 20% increase in a month that only produces 3% of your annual sales is not going to be a powerful trend, but maybe a 6% increase in a month that produces 25% of annual sales is something that is going to be considered much more aggressively in terms of retrending. I literally can put people to sleep because I could go on and on about this, but it is absolutely critical that when I said that today, more so than ever, we've got to have a science part of our business and how we control inventories. And that includes trending, it includes stock to sales ratios. One of the things that I mentioned that I think is going to be important is because a lot of what we're talking about is cash flow. As Mark said, cash is more important today than profits. Balance sheets are more important today than income statements to get through this. We should all tighten up our planned assortments. We should all tighten up our planned stock to sales ratios. If you're planning your apparel to come in, women's apparel to come in and out in 13 weeks or 4 turns, I strongly recommend to plan it up to a 10-week and a 5-turn. Get inventory in and get it out quicker is going to be really the name of the game, I think, through the end of 2020. But quite frankly, it actually was always the name of the game, but now it's mandatory.
Yeah, and I would like to just add on to that, in that even in 2008, in the recession, our stores were like, let's make a deal at the cash register at some point. I was wondering, what the heck are we going to sell in January and February, because things were so heavily discounted in December. And yet we did. I mean, we did, new goods came in, we did start to sell some stuff at regular price. I mean, admittedly, it wasn't until October of 2010 that we were in a real recovery. I mean, where, things were normalizing and we were seeing year-over-year increases. But even in 2008, as heavy as the discounting was, we found classifications in every vertical that we're still selling at regular price. So it's not, we tend to want to brush everything with a wide brush stroke and apply it. That's why we don't believe in blanket markdowns. Stop giving 20 to 30% off your entire inventory. Take the stuff that needs to be marked down and mark it down to 50 or 80% off. The stuff that's new that you can sell at regular price, don't sell it at 20 or 30 off. So be prudent and thoughtful. And Paul said at the beginning, grade your inventory. It's critical that you do that. Not only your A, B, and C vendors, but your A, B, and C inventory. So don't do doing blanket things just hurt your cash flow in bad ways because you mark something down that you could have sold a regular price and then you have to rebuy it. It's a double hit on cash.
And let me jump in, Nico, what Mark said too.
Yep.
You know, the sad part of what we're going through right now from Management One's perspective is that our clients had one of the best Februaries we've ever seen. We had same store sales for our client base up 11.5%, and they were profitable. Their markdowns were cut down dramatically. You can sell profitably new spring inventory as early as in February in this country. The key is to plan it correctly, get it in and get it out quickly based on your plan, and always have fresh. And that's going to be, I think, really the key going forward after we're through this crisis.
And if you folks have your chat window open, Paul mentioned that he could spend hours on this topic. He actually did spend an hour. Springboard hosted an open to buy webinar, and I'm putting a link to all of you to watch that if you're looking for a little more information on stock to turn and all of the info there. I also want to be mindful of everybody's time. We are a little bit over our 12 o'clock. We are going to send out a video recording of this if you do need to leave, and we appreciate everybody coming in. Mark, if you had time for maybe 1 to 2 more questions.
Sure.
All right, you actually just answered the retail question that we had before there. One of our listeners was asking, does anybody know how to sanitize shoes? I don't know if the steam would work on shoes, but
No, well, you can use shoes. You can use a Jiffy Steamer. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone with Jiffy Steamer today. They're sanitizing their doorknobs, their surfaces. They're following all the CDC guidelines. I think if you took a steamer nozzle, and again, I think Celeste mentioned this. Dr. David Cohn, who's one of the top 10 infectious disease people in the world. As a matter of fact, when AIDS was a thing, he was one of the experts in the world on that. We talked to him the other day, and COVID-19 dies at about 150 to maybe 160 degrees. Steam coming out of the nozzle of a Jiffy Steamer is 210. So if you keep it within an inch of the shoe, it'll. We don't have a third-party lab saying it, but there's enough evidence to think that it would clean it. And plus those Jiffy Steamers, by the way, they're made in the United States, and every part is made in the United States. So you're supporting America in that way. But I would say that if you use a steamer, steam boils, steam happens at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a pretty safe bet.
And once we get that information from Jiffy, that is going to be included in our downloadable. I had a question from somebody asking when this is available. We are putting this together this week for everyone to download. So we will send it out to every registrant on this webinar.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk to, I saw a question come in that, we're dreaming about some of the negotiations. We understand that negotiations with your vendors are tough. We understand that vendors with your negotiations with some of your landlords are tough. You're not all going to win, but you still have to work hard for it. And I want to remind everybody that you're all in sales, and no is the first point, is the first step in a yes. So don't quit. Know what your numbers are, know what your math is, stick to your guns, be creative. Don't put lines in the sand. When you get a no, come back with another idea or another thought. But go in with lots of ideas and talk to lots of people who have been through negotiations before to get as much information and feedback as you can. Before I go into a negotiation, I spend hours and hours and hours of time researching and thinking it through. So build on the relationships many of you have had. Remember that don't use the 90-10 rule, where 10% of the time, anywhere from 10 to 20% of the time, or some percentage, you're not going to get what you want. But that doesn't mean that 70 or 80% of the time you won't. You will get what you want. So I've been around a long time. I've been in many lease negotiations. I've been through many vendor negotiations, employment negotiations, lawsuit negotiations. It's your willingness to stick in there and fight the fight for yourself, and use the math and be thoughtful and be creative. And if you're not, talk to your friends that are. I mean, I've found my friends and the people I respect to be in a lot of our retailers. In our community, there's a lot of really smart people out there. Collaborate, work together for your own benefits.
And final question, because it speaks to, I think, a lot of the capabilities of Management One with our data set. Dave is asking, some retailers have multiple locations that may have different sales patterns and timelines
Sure.
when reopening their stores. So what advice can you offer to manage this?
Yeah, well, fortunately for us, we have a gigantic database in just about every zip code. So we can watch business and every bit. You're right, David. Every location, every class of every location is different. They shouldn't be treated the same. And you have different customers. I think that Celeste talked intelligently about understanding who your customer is. Those of you that are going through the whole, that are onboarding into e-commerce or learning, how to think about your customer. It's not about, there's other elements in relating to your customer that drives demand, and knowing and understanding your customer and fulfilling their needs is certainly part of it. But yeah, every class of every client of every location is going to be different, and it shouldn't be planned the same.
If
you're doing your own planning, you should think about it differently.
Yeah. With so many people shifting online, you can even treat e-com as a separate location, and you should.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about the people who have started BOPIS and the people who have who are learning every day about e-commerce. I mean, look at the data. I mean, one of the benefits, one of the reasons we got into machine learning was simple, because more data gives us more points of reference to make comparisons and draw relationships. You can't just look at your own data and make all the decisions that you want to make. Having widespread data is a huge benefit today. And if it's, and I think to the extent that you can use that, you should. And I'm not trying to be self-serving. It's why we're in business. But I think that, if you have one store, if you have multiple stores, you understand that they're all different already. So you wouldn't treat them the same. And it could be even the people in your own stores that are the tail of the tape of how well you do. So.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you to all the retailers that joined us today. I think we're going to close it here. We do have several questions that were not addressed. We're going to go through this entire list and either answer them on our resource page on managementone.com. We're also going to look at a lot of these questions and factor them into our town hall on Thursday. So I encourage you to go to managementone.com and sign up for the town hall, and we can bounce some of these questions off of Ashley and Bob as well. But thank you, everyone. And a recording today will be sent out to all registrants as soon as it is available.
Yeah, and before you close this out, I just want to thank everybody again. And this webinar, the document will be updated. I mean, there's information that came off in the news just as this was going, that the NRF is calling for a federal pandemic insurance program. So there's news that's happening daily. Just stay tuned, be aware, take advantage of what you can. It's all gonna, and you want to put as many wins in your column as you can. Thank you.